Welcome, come on in, everybody. Today we are talking about imposter syndrome. So if you can, please just use the react button at the bottom of your screen and give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. That would be really good. Thank you, Suzanne. Very much appreciated it. So as I said, we're talking today about imposter syndrome and what it is, why we experience it, and then more importantly, of course, what we can do about it. Before I ask Jane to introduce herself, I will just say hello, everybody. I am Charlotte. I am a mindset and burnout coach, and I work with people to make sure that they are able to do work that they love, because I believe that it is fundamentally important that we are able to have the kind of work that we want, work life that we want to have, rather than work life that we don't want to have. And I am joined today by Jane. Jane, can you introduce yourself to everyone before we dive in?
Yes, of course. Welcome everybody, and thank you, Charlotte, for this opportunity to come on your platform as well and speak. I'm very excited. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Jane Fleming. I am from 3 Lead Consulting. So I'm a mindset coach, and similar to Charlotte, I help people really become the best that they can be and overcome all those limiting beliefs that they may have gathered over the years that holds them back from basically achieving the results that they want in life. And so I'm a mum of 3. My background is psychology and teaching, and then I followed, I suppose we talk about purpose quite a bit. I followed my purpose a couple of years ago and started getting into the mindset world, and I haven't looked back since.
Amazing. Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jane. And I don't know if everybody here has already attended a LinkedIn audio event, but it's a little bit like Clubhouse. So if you know that one, what will happen is Jane and I are going to chat probably for about 15 minutes. We're going to go through what imposter syndrome is, why we experience it, the thoughts that are going on behind us, those limiting beliefs that can drive it. And then I'm going to share with you my favorite thought to use when I am feeling like an imposter. And then Jane will share her top tips for coaching yourself when you find yourself in that kind of an environment. And then at the end, we will leave plenty of time. So if you want to chime in, ask us a question, share an experience that you've had, you have a little raise hand button at the bottom. You'll be able to raise your hand, and then, assuming I can make the technology work, we can bring you on and you'll be able to ask your question or join in the conversation. So yeah, please feel free to do that towards the end if that is something that you would like to do. Let's just jump right in. So Jane, you work specifically with limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome. How do you define it when you're thinking about imposter syndrome?
Funny, whenever I was studying psychology, you're going back a good 15, 20 years now. And it wasn't really a term that I was familiar with whenever I was studying. And it's only really recently that it has really become on my radar. And it resonates quite a lot with myself, which is why I'm fascinated. But to me, it's really those groups of thought patterns that lead us to believe certain things. Things like, I'm not adequate enough, I'm unworthy. I'm basically feeling anxious or fearful about our own skills, our knowledge, our confidence in general in doing whatever it is. And it doesn't necessarily just mean within our careers. Many of my clients that I speak to can experience imposter syndromes with regards to their relationships, how they feel as a parent, as a partner, as a friend. So it doesn't necessarily just be isolated to your work or your business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't actually thought about the fact that imposter syndrome can show up in any aspect of our lives where we start to, doubt that we are good enough at what we're doing, doubt that we're doing a good enough job. Or, I mean, particularly in work, what it comes up with often is, when you have been promoted into a new role and suddenly you get the impression, oh no, they're going to realize that I don't know what I'm doing. Someone's going to ask me a question and I'm not going to know the answer. Why why is it that it's so common? Because I mean, the research does show that somewhere between 70 and 85% of people surveyed at some point have felt like a bit of a fraud who's about to be found out. So why do you think it's so common?
I think one, awareness. People are now talking about it.
Mm.
You know, I know whenever I started studying it more, I sort of got a little bit of comfort in knowing that, oh my goodness, I'm not the only one that feels like this. Because
Mm.
people are starting to talk about it more, so then we think it is more prominent. But it goes back, you know, the term was first established way back in the 70s, and there's been more and more research done. Now, it was primarily thought that it mainly affected females, but now, from I think men are starting to open up a little bit more about their mental well-being, it's starting to become evident that males also suffer from symptoms of imposter syndrome. But what I think is important as well, Charlotte, to just let people know, you may experience a symptom of imposter syndrome once. It doesn't necessarily mean that's it. You're going to suffer from it for the rest of your life. You know, that's not really how it works. I find with regards to myself, certain situations may trigger those, you know, symptoms that I have. I don't think I'll ever completely overcome it, but I do now have the tool set to be able to deal with it whenever and recognize what's happening. I think what you're saying as well, you know, asking why is it more prominent? I do think social media has a lot to do with it. You know, one of the symptoms is we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people and thinking we're not good enough, thinking we're not on the same level. And social media can play a big part in that. We look at other people on social media and, you know, they have these perfect lives, a perfect career, perfect family, perfect hobbies, whatever it is. And we set that standard going, well, if I'm not at that level, what's wrong with me?
Exactly. I mean, that compare and despair is so damaging. And it's really true that, I mean, we all know on a conscious level that what you see on social media isn't real, that, you know, people are posting those best photos and the best moments, and it is a very manufactured vision of somebody. But, you know, in the moment when you're caught up with it, you probably don't realize that. And I think it's also true to realize that it's not only about social media though, really, is it? Because when you think in a work environment, or, you know, as a parent, if you're observing the other mums outside school, you're also not seeing the full reality of what is going on for other people around you, and they may look as though they're completely calm and in control and know exactly what they're doing, but they could equally be having similar thoughts of, oh God, I hope nobody knows that, you know, the kids went to school with odd socks on this morning and I haven't done the washing up, and, you know, I don't know what to do about this particular behavioral thing that I've just started to notice in my teenager. And you don't see any of that internal talk to them. You just see someone who looks perfectly calm and shows up on time to get the kids.
Yeah, 100%. And I always link that very much to our self-image. You know, we have two self-images. We have an outer self-image and an inner one. So the outer one being the one that you're portraying to the world, how you're interacting, talking, walking, presenting yourself. And then the inner one, which is your inner talk. You know, all that, you know, your self-worth, your self-belief, what the words you're saying to yourself about yourself. And as you said there, on the outside, people can look and appear as if they have everything together. But inside, they could have all these feelings with regards to imposter syndrome that people just don't even know that that's going on. So I think it's important to recognize that as well. And it's whenever, I suppose, the ultimate goal is to get both the outer and the inner in alignment, so that we're progressing forward and achieving.
Yeah. I'd love to know from anybody listening, give us a thumbs up if you recognize your own experience in any of the things that we have talked about today, where you have felt as though maybe your inner talk and your inner world is not lining up with the outer world that you are projecting or would like to project. Yeah, I think there's a bunch of people who can really resonate with that. So Jane, tell us, if we want to look out on that kind of inner talk for ourselves. Look out for the signs of things that we are thinking or telling ourselves repeatedly, which are likely to make us feel more like an imposter more frequently. What are the most common ones that come up for you and your clients?
Well, I always refer back to Dr. Valerie Young, who created the 5 types of imposter syndrome. So you have the perfectionist, the superhero, the natural genius, the expert, and the soulless. And whenever I'm talking to my clients, whenever I explain all of them, and I'll not go into the big detail about each of them, or because that could be a whole additional hour, but people can resonate with different aspects across all 5, or there could be just one that sits out for them. So I know for myself, personally speaking, I very much fell under the category of the expert. I always felt as if I needed to know more. So there was even a joke running in my family and amongst my friends that I was running out of universities to go to because I was, and we used to laugh about it. Now, when I've started to study all this, I now realize even that joke constantly going on, that was reaffirming in my mind that limiting belief that I had about myself. But I was one of these ones that I always felt as if I needed another qualification. I needed another certificate to just, and once I got it, then that's it. I would know enough then. But then we know that that's not the case. You do that other course, and by the end of it, yeah, you might feel confident in yourself for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, but then those limiting beliefs start to creep in again. And then you start looking for the next course or the next qualification just to validate your own self-worth. So that's the one that I would very much, have resonated with. And even going funny, applying for jobs, and I don't even know if anybody here would resonate with this, but you would look at the job criteria and you wouldn't apply unless you met absolutely every single criteria. And even if you met every criteria, say they were asking for maybe 2 years experience, you'd be going, yeah, I have that 2 years, but somebody else will have 5 years. So they're more likely to get it than me. I'm still not qualified enough. And that used to be me as well. I had to tick every single box before I would go for something. And it just held me back so much.
Yeah. And I think that one is really, really common. I mean, there's certainly research which shows that, that there is a great proportion of people who have a similar approach when applying for jobs of, do I fit every single one of these criteria? And if I don't, then I won't apply. And I think, it sort of seems to fundamentally come down to this idea of needing validation of your worthiness in a way. I know for me, it's often more along the lines of, I should be able to do this better. I should have known that. I should have gotten that right. I should have thought of that in advance. Whenever I would, bring something up and someone would make any kind of feedback, or not necessarily even criticism, just, oh, hey, have you thought about X aspect? My inner talk would immediately be, you should have thought of that. You should have known that question was coming. And the idea that if it wasn't 100% perfect and self-sufficient all on its own, then that meant that I wasn't doing a good enough job.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I was going to say, just before we move into the piece, which I'm sure will be of most interest to everyone here, which is what they can do when they find themselves thinking limiting beliefs such as, I'm not good enough, I don't have the qualifications to do this, I should be better, anything like that. I would like to offer everybody here my personal favorite definition of imposter syndrome, which always makes me laugh and helps me to break the cycle of my negative self-talk when it comes up. Now, I did not make this one up. I first heard it from a woman called Cara Lowenthal, who runs a podcast and a coaching business. But she said that imposter syndrome, when you think about it, what you're basically saying is, because you think you're a fraud, nobody, somebody still hasn't realized that you don't know anything and you shouldn't be here and, you're not doing anything of value, but you're still employed in the job, you are still in the relationship that you're in, you're still, you know, doing a good job, you're still raising your children, wherever it is that you feel like you don't know enough or you're not doing a good enough job, no one's called you out on it yet. So what that means is you are obviously such a good actor or such a good liar and able to pretend so effectively that you do know what's going on. No one has noticed that you don't. And that always just makes me laugh. And I think, okay, if that's what I'm really saying, that I'm able to fake this so convincingly that nobody's noticed yet, that's also pretty cool.
Yeah. That's very good.
But let's get serious. So if somebody is experiencing this, what are the top tips that you share with your clients so that they can really grow their confidence in the moment when these limiting beliefs come up? What do you suggest that they do?
There's there's 5 things that I suggest, but I think before even to understand how we can overcome imposter syndrome, we have to have an understanding of how it occurs in the first place. You know, how have we gathered all these beliefs, these limiting beliefs about ourselves? And it's basically got to do with our inner programming. You know, our inner programming is like a computer or a phone running in the background. And what it's doing is it's controlling our actions and how we behave in everyday life. We're not born with imposter syndrome. We gather these beliefs and these habits formed over many years, and that becomes part of the programming. So every time something negative has happened to us, or maybe someone has said something negative to us, or we've felt there's been a situation we've felt rejected or hurt or disappointed, we interpret that a certain way. And then we tell ourselves a story about it. And we start to believe that story. And then we start to see the world through a lens. And we start to believe and act according to that story that we're telling ourselves. And then every time something else negative happens, it just confirms that story that we've been believing and makes it stronger and stronger within our programming. So I always use the example, and I'll just tell a quick story here. I'm from Northern Ireland, if anybody can tell with my accent, but we have a test. It's called a transfer test, and it determines, we do it at the end of primary school, so age 10, and it determines what type of school we go into in secondary from 11 to 18. At the time in my class, there was only 5 out of possibly like 26, I can't remember, who were selected to do this test. Now that was quite unusual, only 5 people. So you would have thought that me being selected to do that, I would have felt really good about myself. But then I realized that I was the only one out of that 5 who needed a tutor to help me pass that test. And I had built this story in my head that the only way I passed that was because I got help from somebody else. I wasn't able to do it by myself. I wasn't as smart as the other 4 people. And I created this story, and it wasn't true, but that's the story that I told myself based on that, how I interpreted that situation. So then every other thing that's small, it could be even small incidents happening through my childhood growing up after that, it just built on that story that I had told myself. And that's where I believe the first signs of imposter syndrome started for me, where I didn't have that self-belief. So I think it's important for people to realize we're not born with it. It is based on beliefs. But the thing is, our programming, science has proved, we are not wired to be the same for the rest of our life. If we're not happy with the story that has been created up until now, we have the power to change that story. We can change that programming in our mind. And for me, that's how I've been overcoming the symptoms of imposter syndrome that I have been experiencing over the years, and how I help my clients. So the first thing, as I said, it's just being aware. Now, I don't like labels. I think it's the teacher in me as well, but I don't really like labels at all. But imposter syndrome is a thought. it doesn't define who we are. But as I said at the beginning, whenever I realized that I wasn't the only one experiencing these symptoms, it did give me comfort. And I was able to have an understanding of, right, well, what's going on? Why is this showing up for me? And where is it that I want to go? And once I was able to identify what those limiting beliefs were and how they were formed, that's when I was able then to start changing them, start changing the perception, asking myself, well, is this really true? What evidence do I have that supports that story? And what evidence do I have that doesn't support that story? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think questioning, because our brains are, they are wonderful at looking for patterns and looking for evidence. And so if we set our brains to look for evidence that that limiting belief, that story is true, then we will find it.
Yeah.
So reprogramming that search, like, let me look for reasons why this isn't true, is also is so helpful. I mean, the other one that I always suggest is, it doesn't even actually really matter whether or not the story is true. What matters is whether or not the story is helping you to achieve what you want to achieve. And so I often ask myself the question, and my clients the question, not, is that story true? What evidence do you have to support that it's true? But what evidence do you have that believing that is helping you?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then that can often start the process. But I do really want to give a chance for people here to join in our conversation, ask questions, or share a story. So if you would like to join Jane and I, please do use your little raise hand button at the bottom, and then I can attempt to invite you on to speak. So let's give this a go. And let me know if this is working here. Oh, there we go. If you'd just like to introduce yourself and go ahead and ask a question.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Karthik Bhavanan, and I'm currently starting my internship as an analyst intern. And one thing that I really found people, not liking me is with me is that they are telling me that I put up an accent. So it's it's a hardest thing for me to feel sad when they come across as harsh to me that I'm faking an accent. So that's an experience I've had, and it really hurt me so much that I did not know what to do. So how can you help me with that?
So I always would have worried about other people's opinions.
Yes.
And whether or not they liked me.
Okay.
Whether or not, maybe I had said something and I had hurt them in some way, okay. Or even though I wouldn't have, but I played this out over and over and over in my mind.
Okay.
It got to the stage where just working on myself and doing that inner work, it's accepting that, you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, as we would say here. Not everybody's opinions are going to be the same as yours. And that's okay, as long as you stay true to yourself and who you are as a person. You will start to attract the people that you need to attract. And it's not about, isolating yourself or shutting yourself off from all those people who are not being nice to you, or it's surrounding yourself with those people who you want to be with, who are going to support you, who are going to, be your champion. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I love that advice, Jane. I think that's really true. Just kind of knowing who you are and being true to you. I mean, the other thing I might suggest, Karthik, and you can see whether this works for you, is you know that you're not faking an accent. So if somebody says that to you and they say, it might be, you know, it might feel hurtful, but you could also just choose to think, well, you're just wrong. You know, like, I'm not faking this accent, and you get to think that if you want, but you're wrong. And it doesn't have, you don't have to take that on board, because you know that it isn't true.
Okay.
And I would always say as well, Karthik, you know, other people's opinions is none of my business.
Okay.
The only person's opinion that is my business is my own opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a shift, but
Yeah. But you do that through, again, it's working on self-image. Like, you know, I'm very passionate about self-image. It's working on that, how much you value yourself, you see yourself, you feel about yourself.
Okay.
And whenever you have a strong self-image, other people's opinions, it won't matter as much.
Okay. I think that was a really good advice for me to learn. And I think you people have really helped me out with this question that I posed to you. And I think it means a lot to me that you guys are really very helpful and able to understand my own personal experience of what I shared. And I think that makes wonders for me.
Oh, very brilliant.
I'm so glad to hear it. Thank you so much for coming on and asking your question. Is there anyone else who has a quick question before we wrap up today? Give you a moment there for some hands. Okay, well, if not, before we wrap up, oh no, there's Martin. Let me see if I can get Martin on here.
Hi Martin, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? No, I just wanted to, I logged in there and I've seen Jane was speaking, so that was brilliant, Jane. There was great insight there from, and so many of us get caught up on the worrying about what other people think about us, and as you correctly say, it means little to nothing, none of my business. I think that's a great response. I like that a lot, and I think also I spoke to a lot of people at the weekend there, and they were talking a lot about their health as well, and they were like, "Oh yeah, my health's so bad," and it's like, and then you ask the question, "Oh really, what's wrong with you?" And they're like, "Oh well, there's nothing really wrong with me. I'm just," and it's that kind of mind over matter, and I think we all get, particularly with the times that we're in as well, it's that none of it really is affecting us really. But I suppose we wake up, and if I've talked a lot about this myself, if we have to create the right environment around us, we have to surround ourselves with the right people. It's so important that because if you don't, the doubt kicks in and the doubt sets in. And yeah, so very good today. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and you know what you were saying there, Martin, too, about people's talk, you know, saying that they're not feeling well. That self-talk is so important when it comes to imposter syndrome, because when you tell yourself something often enough, you do start to believe it. And we have to ask ourselves, you know, some of the things that we're saying, when those doubts come in, those fears come in, would we say that to people who we're close to? And 9 times out of 10 we wouldn't. So why is it then that we say it to ourselves and we beat ourselves up? So I would always, you know, I always talk a lot about affirmations, and affirmations is really building those neural pathways. It's going to like crowd out all that negative self-talk and replace it with self-empowering thoughts. But then along with that, we have to take action as well. You know, it's not enough to talk ourselves into being confident. We actually have to take the action if that is what we want.
Yes, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Action is so important, and I think that's where the coaching comes into it, because as people, we need that accountability as well, because it's kind of, unless you kind of like are really self-motivated, it can be very hard to get up in the morning, get out to work, achieve your goals, that kind of thing. But no, absolutely, I think action is very, very important. And you know, I'll share something quickly with you. I was once asked myself many, many years ago what the most important thing was to me, my character or my reputation. And it was a really good question, because it's something that we don't realize, is that the only thing that we're in control of is our character. We can't control what other people think about us. We can't control that sort of reputation. So no, today was very good. Thank you for having me up, Charlotte. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you for joining us, Martin. So we've got one more person who would like to join us before we wrap up. I'm appreciating everybody's time so far. We are 1 minute over. So if you have to jump, go right ahead. If you want the recording of the last few minutes, just pop me a message after this event and I will make sure that you get that. But yes, I am going to mispronounce your name, Ade or Ade. I'm not quite sure how to do that. Please correct me when you unmute yourself.
Thank you, Carlotte. Hello, Jane, Martin, and Carlotte. So perhaps I wanna tell a little bit experience about imposter syndrome. To be honest, that I knew imposter syndrome because of my friend. So the story began when I got offering from the organization, and they offer me the good opportunity, but I was dope at the time, and so I asked to my friend about my feeling, and my friend told to me, hey Ade, you have imposter syndrome. So for me, I don't know much about imposter syndrome. So I wrote on my LinkedIn and asked some of my friends here on LinkedIn to give me advice or tell me what it is, the real meaning of imposter syndrome. That's my story.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. It is incredible sometimes how it does take someone from the outside to sort of say to us, you're not recognizing, you know, the incredible value that you are bringing to this situation, and you are talking yourself down. And luckily that you had such a good friend who was able to point you in the direction of a little bit more self-belief.
And that's so important. You know, we always say we're the sum of the 5 people we surround ourselves with. And it's having those people, Ade, that are willing to challenge our self-doubt and help us shift our perspective, you know, because they're the ones that are going to be able to see our strengths and our qualities as well, when sometimes we can't see it ourselves. So it's great to surround yourself with those types of people.
Yes, exactly. And my friend told to me that, hey, see, they choose you because they see something in you. Why you don't believe in yourself? And I started thinking, oh yeah. Then I realized that I've always doubted myself. Yeah, I don't believe in myself, but now I'm working on it.
Amazing. Well, brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Before we wrap up, Jane, quickly tell people, how can they find you, follow you, work with you, if that's what they want?
Yeah, so just click on now on my icon and you can come over and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram under 3lead, LEAD consultant. And pop me a message, we can jump on. I offer free one-to-one coaching calls where we just talk about your strategies, where it is that you want to go, where you are at the minute, and what work we can do to help you get there. So head over, connect, and I look forward to having a chat.
Brilliant. That sounds amazing. So if you want more support around removing some of those limiting beliefs, do get in touch with Jane. I also have a special offer on for end of year Christmas festivities. So if you are looking to set up 2023 to be your best, most productive, most confident year yet, and you want to make sure that you do not burn out as you blaze your way through 2023, please get in touch with me. Up until the end of the year, I am offering free accountability add-ons to the end of every program that is signed up for, and that's usually an extra £500. So if that's something that sounds interesting, pop me a message here on LinkedIn and let's have a chat to see whether or not we're a good fit. It only remains to say thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. And thank you, Jane. This has been really informative.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, for having me, and have a lovely holiday, everybody.
Yeah, have a wonderful rest of your week. Happy Christmas or Hanukkah if you are celebrating that. And if you're not, I hope you're getting some time off anyway. See you all soon.
Bye.